we have a very young workforce, and typically the questions I hear is how did you navigate your career? What are the decisions you made? Why you made? What was your thought process and so forth? Looking at your journey as well, starting from Informix to where you are now, you have done various things. So can you give some nuggets from your path?
I think, I'm sorry I'm taking people away from coding and actually doing stuff, but hopefully they can hold their attention for Can everybody hear us okay, or should we speak louder? Should the volume be turned up a little bit? It's good? Or do you want me to speak louder? What do you want me to do? Okay, speak louder so the wisdom will just.
All right.
So Murli, I just want to thank Murli for putting this together at short notice. Murli and I are dear friends. I'm a huge fan of Murli for what he's built and struck fear into the heart of VCs by building good stuff at Amazon, which I will never forgive him for. I'm just really amazed to be at Razorpay and what you guys are accomplishing, and thank you for having us. Just want to acknowledge my colleagues Vivek and Arthur who are here on this trip, and we don't cease to be amazed. Every meeting is amazing. The energy of Bangalore and Chennai is amazing. The can-do attitude is amazing. We visited PhonePe yesterday. We're visiting Razorpay today, and we did a panel with the founder CTO of Ola last night. So I was telling Arthur that this is his first visit, that he's basically seeing, and now we have, Murli sitting here, he's seeing the creme de la creme within like one day. It took us many years to get to the point of even getting to know people like you guys. So we are amazed by what's happening here. And thanks to Murli for having us. Anyhow, so what do I say? So let me see how I take that question. First is for all you young people who are building stuff, please ignore any advice I give you. So I'll try not to give you any advice. I think I'm originally from Calcutta. You may not know, I'm an IIT Kharagpur dropout. Because I wanted to play cricket, but let's not go there. And then went to USA to do my PhD. I always loved computer science, especially algorithms. I was always a bad and slow programmer. I wrote good code, but slowly, unlike most of you. But loved algorithms, and that's what I did my PhD in. And then I was actually going to go probably become a professor at University of Illinois Urbana, because I did my PhD in parallel algorithms. And during my time, which is before your time, there was this consortium of supercomputing centers in the US, which included Yale and Michigan and Caltech, Rice, Stanford, and Urbana. And moving between these universities was fairly common for students who did their PhDs in my area. But my advisor said, I don't think you're cut out for the boredom and the small circle of academia. You may not realize that it's fairly restrictive. You should go west, go to Silicon Valley. And the only advice he gave me is don't do hardware, do software. And I had no clue what I was doing. In fact, I didn't even know how to spell databases. So accidentally went to what happened to be the hottest company at that time. Informix was arguably the best product I've ever worked on, right? They had an OLTP product and a data warehousing product and phenomenal team. I didn't know any of that. I didn't even know where I was going. And I think that part I was very lucky. The first 9 years of my career was spent at fairly pioneering companies like Informix and Oracle. And working on database kernels is just a blessing. As Murli knows more than most of the people here, if you work on really well architected software, which solves problems of functionality, scale, and generally supporting real industries, right? If you think about it, databases built by Ingress and IBM and Sybase and Oracle essentially allowed the financial industry to happen. They allowed the airline industry to happen, right? And the kind of thoughtfulness and genius that went into writing this software is just amazing. So I always encourage computer science people like you guys to go read those early foundational papers and why things happened. Again, with a sense of love and kind of knowing the history of computer science is important in software. Something we'll probably talk about today about how you guys are running software processes today. So I would say then after Oracle, we were very fortunate at Oracle. I would say Oracle RDBMS engineering is probably the best engineering team I've ever worked in my whole career. And a lot of my mental models around how to build teams, how to recruit talent, senior and junior, how to put teams together, which I've had the good fortune of doing over and over again. I learned a lot of these tools of the trade at Oracle because of the depth of engineering, of the meritocracy, of people who got promoted, being just better than everybody else. And think about the companies that came out of our floor at Oracle: Snowflake, Rubrik, Nutanix. Keep going. Everything came out of these 30 people at Oracle generated all these companies, right? So I would say that I'm really, 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 really grateful to that phase of my life. And I'll come to some principles very quickly because Murli called me today and I said, what's up? What should we do? He said, you should dispense some gyan. And Murli knows fully well I don't like to give gyan because I don't take much gyan from people either. But so I would say I went to Yahoo late. I was very fortunate at Yahoo because just of the culture there, the engineering culture, the culture of innovation and how to run like a startup, even at a big company phase, was amazing at Yahoo. The engineering quality was amazing. The idea of build quickly, iterate quickly was amazing. I was very lucky there because I got noticed, and Yahoo had acquired at that time, 2007, late 2006, we bought this big company, the biggest advertising exchange of the time called Right Media. And ads in terms of its effect on humanity, I think there are lots of gray areas. But any of you who's done computer science, computational advertising is probably one of the most interesting areas you can work in because it lies in the confluence of distributed systems, database systems, information retrieval, deep machine learning, and auction design and mechanism design. If you pay attention, all of this happens at the same time. So I would say Right Media, Yahoo, running engineering there was amazing. And then I got very lucky, as Murli knows, 4 or 5 of us came out of Yahoo to essentially rebuild all of LinkedIn. LinkedIn was growing at the time. It was around 50 million users at that time. And I was lucky to be the founding head of data infrastructure. A friend of mine who came from Yahoo was founding head of security. Another friend was the founding head of ops. And our boss also came. So 4 of us came, and Jeff Wiener and Reid Hoffman essentially said, stuff is not working, figure out how to rebuild this whole thing. And it was the second phase of LinkedIn. And we had fairly profound education around how to build platform teams and how to change culture, how to make it data-driven, how to make sure that the product verticals were using services built by these platform groups, whether in ops or data or security. And as Murli knows, I'm a huge fan of open source, learned a lot about open source at Yahoo. But Yahoo, I would LinkedIn, the data team, you guys probably know, per capita probably generated more open source projects than most other in Silicon Valley. I would say a lot of it has changed the history of startups. Imagine, like, if you didn't have Kafka, you probably wouldn't be able to do certain things. The biggest project we did at LinkedIn, I'm going into a little bit of details because I'll stop about engineering after a while. Murli told me not to go too much into engineering, so we'll stop in about 2-3 minutes. I would say the biggest project we did at LinkedIn, which never got open source, is called Espresso. And Murli may or may not do this. Espresso was a distributed database with eventual and strong consistency, built on top of MySQL, DB. And Murli's old colleague Anurag Gupta and Swami, who are the gods of Amazon, came to visit us a lot, and we essentially went through the entire design of Espresso, data bus, Kafka, and a lot of the next generation stuff that got built at Amazon, I'd like to believe was partly influenced by what we did, including DynamoDB, right? Including Kinesis, right? So all things data infrastructure was a lot of fun. Open source was a lot of fun. After that, I really wanted to run my own shop. So I went to a very tiny company called NerdWallet, which is a financial marketplace company. We went IPO about a year ago, just to learn how to run a full engineering team, how to change culture, and also not to work purely on the infrastructure side. Everything was reporting up to me. So how to do better product design, how to build teams which are not just about infrastructure talent, but about all kinds of talent. So that was a lot of fun. And then I was burnt out. I actually retired. Murli probably knows this. I wanted to go spend 4 years in government in Hillary Clinton's administration to run privacy policy for the US. So I was very interested in data privacy and all the challenges that come from having built advertising systems and stuff that you guys must have read about at the heart of Google or the heart of Facebook. All the questions that come up repeatedly about what is an individual in the context of showing ads where it's free membership. I wanted to be on the other side and add knowledge to the government side of a democracy so that better governance can happen. Because Silicon Valley in a way is so far ahead of the game. If you look at what's happening with foundation models and generative AI and open AI now, the innovation is it's just hitting inflection points. And how to govern in this triangle of government, academia, industry, and other groups, citizens groups on one side is something that I'm deeply interested in. So we feel all of us immigrants in the US who have benefited from structural benefits in the US, including a working democracy, not being persecuted, we owe a democracy the right substance, the right structure. And I am a huge believer in successful business people and technologies going back to government to start structures there. Anyway, so that didn't work because Hillary did not get elected. I retired. I actually went deep into nonprofits at that time, started a couple of nonprofits, which I still run, and became an angel investor and advisor. I was very lucky. Joe, who's the founder of Palantir, that you may or may not have heard about, it's a pioneering company. So Joe had been trying to recruit me for a while, and I came to 8VC just for a year. And then because of the amazing team we have, the Viveks and the Arthurs of the world, we have really laid the foundation of a huge firm. We are now, I would say, investing very heavily into enterprise infrastructure, into SaaS. We have invested into India. We've done 4 deals here. So that is kind of the details of my journey. In terms of finishing this monologue, because all of you will fall asleep, I don't think I've planned my career at all. I think the luck that I had was working on data early in my career. And it turns out that if you have worked in data, and for Razorpay, we were visiting PhonePe yesterday, right? Rahul is an amazing guy, the CTO. And we asked him what its challenges were. And as we kept on shelling the onion, it all came down to data. He said, all of my challenges are in the online and offline data tier, which is fascinating for somebody as smart as that to say that, in terms of how the company is scaling. So, right now where we are is we want to do more in India. We've done 4 deals. We want to start companies out of here. We want to have a future incubated company, CTO sitting here. And 8VC, I won't go into it too much. We manage about $6 billion, and we primarily do very heavy data, AI, and cloud-centric enterprise software, vertical and horizontal. But we also start companies ourselves. So it's very important for me as an ex-builder, and you're still a builder, Murli, that I am able to still build stuff and able to think about products, think about go-to-market, even hire engineers on my own. So, I just started my second company, and that is probably the most enjoyable part of my life, which is being able to build stuff. In terms of luck, I would say I naturally gravitate towards people who are more intelligent than me, who are better human beings than me. I've been blessed with a compass about identifying talent, and I naturally, even Murli, he showed up. So you guys don't, he's much too humble. So I had asked Anurag, my old friend, who happened to be Murli's boss, saying, who is the one person in India we should meet last March? And he said, you got to meet this guy, Murli. And Murli came over to our hotel in Madras wearing chappals. And I knew all about what he's done. He's an amazingly humble guy. But I think this is kind of a relationship which is only a year old. And I think we've developed deep respect and love and trust for each other. And I would say that is the most important part of my life, whether it's on my nonprofit side or in my VC side or in starting companies side or in my past life. Just being close to and learning from more intelligent people, more enterprising people, and better human beings is probably the only structure that I've found in my life. Anyway, that was an insanely long monologue. I'm going to give the mic back to Murli.
This was good, Bhaskar. Well, you should then also, outside the work, I saw that you spent a couple of summers with Mother Teresa, about your, you briefly talked about non-profits and whatnot. So give some insights there. What did you learn?
I never talk about this. I told him not to ask me that question. Um, I don't know. I think it's important for all of us. If you're in tech, if you're in the intersection of venture capital and tech, if you're a founder, if you're a software engineer, we lead fairly intense and isolated lives. The art of building stuff is a very isolated act. And I think a lot of us intense people who are alpha, who like to build stuff, who walk through doors, often don't find balance in our lives. And for us, people like us who are older, who have gone through, families, having a baby, having a home, going through multiple companies. I mean, something I realized early, but I did not put into action, is the other parts of our lives, right? So I'm also a musician. We have had a band for many years. I run a couple of nonprofits. One is focused on India. One is focused on historically Black colleges. I don't think these are tick marks that you give. I think it's important for everybody to have some sort of inner narrative around why you work and what relationships are valuable to you. And if you find out that in work, things will always go up and down, and it's hard to always index your identity to work success. It's a fair amount of noise coming from there, should be. I think it's important for each of us to have our own inner lives in terms of whether you like music, you like reading, you like to go for walks, you do yoga, you do nonprofit stuff, you do charitable stuff. I think we don't need to discuss that too much in public, but if you don't take care of your inner health and you keep yourself engaged, not just for profit, but for gifts you get inside, it's hard to sustain yourself in these kind of industries. That's probably something that I feel mostly, but I try to put into practice more often than not.
So I think this is a very important point, especially when I see youngsters just with few years of working in career asking for a sabbatical, people feel burnt out. I think it's important to have that balance, have a life outside the work also, have some hobby, make sure that it's not just balance, it's a harmony, as Bezos would say, which means a lot. Have something outside to go to, not just work, right? So
yeah, I think the other part that folks in Bangalore have to realize that, we have gone through, in my career, I've gone through 3 cycles in Silicon Valley, right? Of creation of technologies, companies, economic value, enormous wealth, enormous successes, but also enormous failures. It's important that for us to know, we don't need to talk about it in public, that the same people who are very successful in startups, some of them also have failed in their family lives. It's important to know, did you take care of your children? So I think the thing to recognize about Bangalore is Bangalore has turned into this amazing, huge economic flywheel. That's so much creativity on the business side. Tech side is going to be unleashed from here. And Silicon Valley has been that way for 30 years now. I think it's just your personal responsibility and your family's responsibility and the friends that you have to recognize that you're part of this flywheel, and that the system itself is bigger than the individual. When economic flywheels are created, whether it's in a mining town, whether it's a gold rush California thing, whether it is Wall Street and financial services, whether it is the insurance and financial services industry in London, right from the 1800s onwards, the system has a tendency to chew you up. And the reason I think inner lives are important as you go through these fairly fast moving industries that all of us are part of, and everybody sitting here is to recognize how to keep that harmony and recognize that you are in a system, that you need to make sure you safeguard yourself as an individual also. And that's why these other practices and kind of harmony in your life, having some time for yourself, for your friends, for your family is important. I can't give you a formula of how to reach that moksha, but I think self-awareness that we are part of a system is pretty important.
Thank you, Bhaskar. So one thing that I was very amazed about is how many new companies came out of your LinkedIn data infrastructure team, right? So I would like to replicate some of that at Razorpay, if possible. So we are embarking on open sourcing. We have done quite a bit of open sourcing. I think more than 140 GitHub projects are there from Razorpay. We pledge to the FOSS initiative. We have open source meetups that happens. I think every other Saturday, people from other companies come and meet here at Razorpay. We do open sourcing on Fridays, just as a program where developers can come and help and whatnot. But what is the secret on going beyond just putting the code out there, but which would result in companies like Confluent and so forth, right? Like, what is the formula there?
Again, if I knew the formula, I'd tell you, but I would say I have observed a few things to be true through my Yahoo and LinkedIn journey. Yahoo, Oracle, LinkedIn, Google less so, Facebook, they have generated a huge number of, less so Google, but I would say Yahoo, LinkedIn, and Facebook have generated more per capita, more companies. I think there are a few things going on. One is open sourcing is a double-edged sword. So open sourcing is just a technique. At LinkedIn, we did open sourcing partly to win the talent wars. I was having to close candidates against Google and Amazon and eBay and PayPal, and man, it was hard, right? So open sourcing also attracted really good kids from the top schools, right? So there was a cynical transactional aspect to it. The spiritual aspect is that, computing, you should go back and read like Richard Stallman's stuff, which I encourage all of you, the guy who was the founder of Open Software Foundation at MIT. It's important, I think it's important for computer science to become more and more democratic so that it becomes like a highway. It's like oxygen. So I think that ethos at LinkedIn as well as Yahoo was there, right? So now you open source something. I think the key part that is unsaid is the quality of hiring at LinkedIn and the quality of, and the culture of empowerment at LinkedIn. So you are hiring great people, and these are people, if you have good architecture in your software, you can decouple things and say, okay, this part can be open sourced, or you can, you can use open source and commit to it and stuff. So you're ultimately, the open sourcing aspect is just the secondary aspect. It's about the people who are the leads of those projects. So the challenge we managers face is a lot of the folks doing open source would suddenly be really enamored of the community outside and spend time outside. Maybe they'll spend less time fixing bugs in production. I can't say these things in public. In private, I can give you examples. Oh boy, I handled that a lot at LinkedIn. I had to run shadow groups. I don't want to go there. But the people that we put in charge of these projects, whether it is Jay, Kafka, whether it's Shashanka, Data Hub, Kishore, Pino, when at least 7 startups came out of our team, I'm forgetting all the names, they are all ownership-oriented people. So they are leaders by themselves. And when they're building these structures inside the company, whether it's Razorpay or LinkedIn, they are already acting like owners. And I knew when I brought many of them in, and they have all gone on to, like Swaroop went on to become head of data and search at Airbnb. And a lot of the success of Airflow owes it to Swaroop, right? It came out of Airbnb. So there you go, one more that indirectly came from LinkedIn. I think these leaders and builders were all owners. And for second, third line managers, when you are managing people like that, you know that there's a shelf life of talent. You want to keep this culture of innovation and ownership going inside Razorpay, while fully knowing that this particular leader who is owning this part of the architecture and open source, at some point in time will go and do something on their own. I think it's very important for the senior leadership to be aware of that. And I would say at Yahoo and LinkedIn, we knew that if this project goes well, this guy's going to go do something. And that's just how it was. We set up succession plans. So I think these are some of the things that you have to be aware. I think the other part is that I don't know about, during my time, I had a massive team. My time at Yahoo, I had a massive team here, which was doing a lot of Hadoop stuff, right? In fact, the biggest Hadoop team in India was the Yahoo data infrastructure teams in Bangalore. And that team itself created a lot of the open source flywheels here. I'm talking about 2008, 9, 10, 11, right? I think that has died down a bit. And open source, the other part you have to be careful about is open source community network effects is all about critical mass. If you don't have that in the surroundings outside of Razorpay, it's very hard for open source to take off. Then get commits, all the stuff that you and I know about, right?
Yeah.
So that part I can't comment on in the context of Razorpay and India, but yeah, I'm a huge supporter of open source community, of leadership inside the company, and around the trade-offs.
So at your current job, there's just lots of areas that you need to spend time on, and you guys are, you briefly talked about your build program also, right? How do you manage your time and still be effective?
I don't think I manage my time very well. Yeah, I only focus on enterprise infrastructure software now and a bit of B2B SaaS. I do have some vertical SaaS investments, but there's a conscious effect that if there's a great founder in these other areas, I hand it over to my partners who are specialists. So that's number one. Number two is, we have been fortunate to build a team around enterprise software at 8VC, which is phenomenal, right? And we only hire computer science grads who have done data and/or AI and/or cloud and/or systems. Otherwise, we don't hire them. So that's a very opinionated take on how you build an investment team, which no other VC does. That's number two. So that takes a lot of load off of my shoulders. I would say it's a very fine balance of three things in life. One is, once I help start a company, there's an outside sense of responsibility I have. So I have to be on call all the time for the first year. Second is, the portfolio size has grown a lot. So I budget a lot more of my time for portfolio support, whether it's hiring, whether it's funding, whether it's follow-on stuff, closing deals, doing biz dev. So I find less time to do deals. So I'm much more opinionated. And I think given that I have much smarter people than me surrounding me, I think a lot of the due diligence about which companies to go after happen at a much higher quality than if I was running it. And I think those numbers are small. We do fewer deals in my area, and we want to write fewer checks, but of larger, because we are also cognizant of the amount of care and time that entrepreneurs and companies need in their journey. I would say in the first 3 years, it's a lot of time, right? So yeah, but it's a fine balance. That's part one. The part I enjoy, I'm a 0 to 1 kind of guy. As I got older, I found out that I actually thrive in more uncertain situations. Right now, I try to spend more time in these kind of conceiving areas, like how do we actually grow in India, which is, uncertainty, not clear what to do. You've done 4 deals. And the other is with, my colleagues like Vivek and Bella and everybody else, Kevin, we do a lot of work with young founders and with universities. So we have a very thriving fellowship program. We have a young founders program, UL Binders program. So I am very disciplined about devoting time to those things, because I think of those as kind of pay it forward. So those are, how do I manage my time? Not very well.
You have your own algorithm for it, and it works for you. That's what I take from here. In terms of just the general macroeconomic condition, what is, from your vantage point, what do you see in the funding scene? What do you see in Valley? What do you see in Bangalore? What do you see in India? Yeah.
So few things. I think one of the happy things about India is a lot of the markets in India are less correlated to the Western markets than it used to be. So that's a good thing. India is going through an explosion in areas like e-commerce, marketplaces, logistics. A lot of innovation, which is software driven, is happening in certain areas, which is very local. It's nothing to do with USA. So I see these secular trends as extremely important for Indian entrepreneurs. Coming to the 8VC party line, look, we don't invest in the India market, so we don't understand it very well. So if you build a Razorpay, I wish to high heavens that I personally or 8VC was the first check in the Razorpay, but we don't, that's not yet what we do. So we are focusing more on build in India, sell worldwide. So given the phenomenal success of, say, certain reference architectures like Freshworks, like Zoho, now like the API company Postman, that is what we have limited ourselves to, that we'll do B2B SaaS, infra, dev tools, maybe a bit of open source, but it's about starting here, scaling it here, getting some product market fit here, and that's it. So I think there is more to come from India. We see phenomenally good entrepreneurs entering the enterprise software space, B2B SaaS and infra, that's one. Number two, in terms of where we are, I think US public markets are a little bit, we're going through a tough time, inflation and the whole Russia situation. So for VCs, we are, of course, a little bit, we're watching closely about when will liquidity events happen again, right? Whether it's an IPO, whether it's an acquisition. So we feel the exit stuff is going to be a little bit harder. If you reverse engineer it, I would say we do mostly early phase deals, pre-seed, seeds, and A's. I would say valuation is being looked at a bit more carefully. But if you're a good team in a high time area, things are still getting funded. Maybe people ask a bit more questions about the valuation. So we don't see that changing. Even in India, there are fantastic entrepreneurs who have raised seeds in the last 6 months. Yeah. They didn't have a problem. They had multiple term sheets. Little bit more stringency is happening in the Series A. People are asking more questions about margins, unit economics. What are you burning? What sort of ACV are you going after? We look at this as a welcome correction. If you look at the valuations in 2019, 2021, they did not have any ground in logic. We don't think so, even now. In that sense, I would say 8VC has been fortunate to be a more mindful firm about it. I don't think we have gone crazy about valuations. You won't find that many examples. So I think we look at this as a welcome correction. Right now, our focus is to make sure our entrepreneurs all stay alive, they're funded. That's most important to us. As an ethos of the firm, we always have enough dry powder. We are very fortunate to be good fundraisers. Our portfolio, we want to make sure nobody goes out of business for 3 years. So, we are very focused on that. But coming back to it, macro India, we are extremely bullish. Macro Indian entrepreneurs from this ecosystem, we are more than bullish. We can't wait to do more.
Awesome. And you're going to meet the founders in our RISE program. I think many of those folks are here. So thanks for spending time with them also. From
Any
4 o'clock.
Questions or no questions?
Yeah, we'll start with questions, I think. Let me see if there is a Slido. Let me see if there is. Is there any questions online? And then we'll go here itself. Okay, on Slido, what are the key areas, topics in which you help the early stage founders? I think you have addressed it. Unless you have.
No, this is a fantastic question. Okay. I mean, there are 5 or 6 areas. 8VC has this interesting thing called the pull model and not the push model. We don't like to go tell founders what they need to do. They should be structured enough to pull help out of us. We don't like to go impose ourselves. We find ourselves for early phase entrepreneurs helping a lot around talent, even like engineer sourcing. We help a lot, talent around product management, engineers, first go-to-market hires. Talent seems to be an important area. Second is pilots, biz dev, finding them companies they can talk to and get into a mode where they can actually have pilots and design partners. It's extremely important. Third is hooking them up with other founders to do mutual problem solving, whether it is in cultural issues, reference architecture for what tech stack you should use, how do you use the GCP or the Amazon credits, where do you go to hire for who, what campuses do you go to, what problems do you solve off the record. So I would say those are three areas we actually find ourselves spending tons of time. Also around competitive stuff, we in our thesis areas, we really try to be abreast and up to date about what other companies are doing. So if we see a company that we know about in an area that our portfolio companies are working in, we are fairly forthright about making sure we bring that up, make them aware of stuff to the extent it's legal.
Okay. The next question, what parameters do you use to judge founders? How important is it to have backgrounds in tier 1 institutes?
Did something explode? What happened? No, actually, we are very mindful of this. In the USA, naturally, we gravitate towards the top tier schools, but we have found that like if you look at a university like University of Illinois Urbana or UT Austin or UW Seattle, my favorite school, Vivek is going to get upset, is actually not Yale. I went to Yale. My favorite school is actually University of Waterloo. I found the kids coming out of the University of Waterloo CS and software engineering program to be not only the best academically trained, they're the best cultural, like their teamwork is phenomenal. They have deep wisdom about internships from industry. They've spent 5 years doing it. So so that's USA. The answer is no, that we don't exclusively back founders from the top schools. Now, India is a very unique situation. In our last visit that we came, say, last March, and even in last November when I came, we met a lot of founders. A lot of them were not, shall we say, they were not from IIT Kanpur or Madras or Bombay. So those are the top 3 CS programs that we traditionally think of coming in from outside. We met a lot of kids, founders, kids meaning they're young founders, not kids, but from, I don't call it whatever tier school you want to call them. We were blown away. We were blown away by their chip on their shoulder, their energy, their confidence, and how they want to prove themselves. So in a way, and it's funny, we discussed this with Girish, founder of Freshworks, when he was visiting us in San Francisco, visiting Joe and me. I actually brought it up with Girish. And Girish said, I built my whole company by hiring from universities, because I couldn't get into an IT, something like that. I don't remember the story. So for India, I think it's really important to have a very strong North Star about what you're looking for in founders, in terms of not just index them on the label of the school. And for that requires a bit of work, because you have to go find the right place at the right time. So that's one. What kind of founders do we look for? That's a very difficult question. I think there are many paths to success and there are many paths to failure. A bit of domain knowledge always helps. Now, if you've worked in a certain domain and then you separate out, think about that this person actually built tech for this domain, this person think about the market more and knows actual business use cases and go to market. I think that's probably important. We look for chemistry and combination of skills in a founding team. Because of our confirmation and my confirmation bias, I tend to back teams with 3 technical founders. But I'm increasingly finding out that you need a bit of product DNA, go-to-market DNA in the founding team. So I think the mix of skill sets and founders is also important. To us, founder chemistry is really important. A lot of the challenges in early phase startups happen because the founders don't get along. They can't iterate and problem solve together. I think founder skill set and chemistry are important, but 2 other things are important. Self-awareness is the most important thing. So the reason I like to at least take a meeting with my colleagues in the same room and the founders is I try to feel, is there chemistry? Can we problem solve? Can they actually think about what mistakes they made yesterday? Now, that's a very hard thing to judge in a limited time if you don't know the person already. Are they a good listener? We find founders who are actually high EQ and have self-awareness tend to overcome more obstacles. So that's number 2. Number 3 for early phase investing is we must all be convinced that this is a high time area. If the market is not there, creating markets is very hard in venture capital. You can have a bad product idea and still get around it and iterate. But if you're in a market with no secular pull, it's very hard. And we like to see founders being aware of that. So those are the few things.
Okay. Do you think with the cost optimizations in mind, existing SaaS companies will have tough time going forward? What do you think? Which kind of SaaS companies will survive and thrive in this environment? Cost optimization and the SaaS companies in general.
What does that mean?
Pretty much everybody is now looking at cost optimization on the services that they use.
Oh,
right?
Meaning companies are buying SaaS products and don't
SaaS
want to
products.
pay enough.
Yeah.
Right. I think it has to do with macroeconomic things. So it's question of if the economy is growing and the people and the companies buying software are profitable and growing, then they have to think about bottom line versus top line, right? Ultimately, look, ROI in software is often a dark art, right? So we always ask founders, how are you going to make the first sale? Is it a headcount reduction thing? Is it an ROI thing? Is it that budget is already there? They were paying somebody else, so they'll pay you a little bit less. I think this phase that we are going through right now is a very good time for founders and SaaS software builders to ask themselves that question. That if I enter an ecosystem, why does somebody want to pay me X rupees or X dollars today? Why will they pay me 3X the next year? I think we just hope all of you or whoever asked that question that you don't run out of money, that you stay alive. That's first. Second is be very, very, very mindful of the value that your software is generating. Is it a workflow? Is it a persona acceleration thing? Is it reduction of headcount? This is a good time to think that through. That's probably how I will put it.
Okay. Should we take any questions from people here? Come forward and you can use the mic here.
Hello, Bhaskar. Thank you so much for this wonderful talk. You mentioned briefly about generative AI and how like this is like creating new business opportunities and is also a threat to existing businesses. As a founder who is just in the 0 to 1 journey, how do we think about creating proprietary databases to capture that value? And what are the business model innovations or new kind of business models we should be aware of at this point?
I don't know the answer very well. I'm thinking about it. My colleague Vivek has dived into it more. I think in the generative AI foundation model space, one of the questions we as infrastructure investors ask ourselves is, in the tooling, in the workflow management, in the lifecycle management of AI, is there an infrastructure opportunity or not? It is not completely clear to us yet, and we can discuss it afterwards, whether there are massive infrastructure opportunities there that can be venture scale. That's number one. Number two is, you will be doing embeddings into products to make them better. So the question is, depending on the kind of department you're selling into, whether it is marketing, we see more around marketing, HR, and sales as the three areas where we see more obvious early entrance of generative AI. We are still early in figuring out where will there be a nonlinear value add, so much so that the entire value does not accrete back to OpenAI or to Hugging Face, whoever is giving you the models. So I think it's too early to tell, but can't answer your question deeply enough, but we'd be happy to have a conversation about it later in the follow-on. So yeah, the proprietary data part is extremely important as to how much retraining you can do. And the other challenges in the data part is the following. Ultimately, if a new model is offering economic value to a certain customer and you are running it on-prem or SaaS, hopefully, can you do transfer learning or not? So something to think about that I personally don't know the answer to, but that's what we are digging into. So
thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi, Bhaskar. So you've seen a lot of open source projects which have become successful from within your teams, right? So I wanted to ask, what are the strategies that your teams employ to actually make them successful? Because just open sourcing is not the only thing, right? How do you get them to get adopted? How do you make them successful?
I mean, you only open source something that you know is solving a pain point outside. So, I mean, open sourcing for the sake of open sourcing doesn't make sense. So you need to have a sense of the market pull around just developers using it or something, right? So that was true for Data Hub, that was true for Kafka, it was true for Pinot, and true for many other things, even like a fairly non-optimal scheduler that we wrote called Azkaban on top of Hadoop, for Airflow and everything. There was a huge market need for it. There were no good orchestration engines on top of Hadoop at that time. I'm sure you remember. So you have to have market need, some personas. To open source, you have to know which personas will use it, number one. And after open sourcing, what it requires a fair bit of live community interaction, answering questions. The other part that we found in doing open source is like the self-serve part, the easy to build part is very important. Cannot be too complicated. I mean, the actual deployment has to be simple enough. So I remember Jay and the Kafka team working very hard in the second year of open sourcing, doing that, like actually making it deployable, because Kafka is not a trivial product to deploy and use, right? It's ultimately a distributed system. I would say those are important. After that, it's all about community organizing. And then when it comes to the point, when do you allow commits? When will you allow user, community generated content to come back? There's no right or wrong answer. Certain, I would say the Apache projects we saw during our Yahoo time, I won't name them, including something I mentioned already, they suffered from very, very strong centralized control by the creators. And that caused cultural problems that didn't allow even good engineers outside of Yahoo or that Apache team to be able to contribute back. So how you manage that kind of trade-off, how you let people, whether you allow commits back into the core engine or into some integration point, these are some of the techniques, I would say. Yeah.
And did you, have community builders within the team, or did you foster it outside the company?
No, I mean, I don't know if you paid attention about me running shadow teams. No, these engineers, genius engineers we had were the community builders. Some of them were amazing evangelists. Sometimes what happened is some of the initial users, committers from outside became evangelists, but whoever is open sourcing has to hit the road, has to pound the pavement, has to be able to evangelize. It requires a certain persona. If you're a very shy, introspective person, it is hard. So the challenge, it's actually, fairly high effort to get those first 5 adopters who are willing to come to meetups every 2 weeks in the evening, eat pizza and beer and think about stuff and code with you. That stuff all happened from within my teams. People who showed up in the second year, third year, not before.
Okay, thanks so much.
Hey Bhaskar, hey Murli, thank you for your time. So I had one question. I mean, we have talked about all the tech products right now, but what do you think of cybersecurity SaaS as a market, right? I mean, if you see India is coming up with the new data protection bill, right? And where they have mentioned that they'll be fining, I mean, for fining companies for data loss and implementing penalties. I guess it's $30 million of fine, right? If I'm not wrong. So what do you think of cybersecurity SaaS as a market for next 5 to 10 years in India, if you can focus?
I don't know the India data protection bill. I will go read it. If you guys can send me what we should read. What you specifically mentioned was less about security, more about compliance and governance. So yes, compliance and governance are important. We have done a few investments in that area. Privacy, we have done something called Lightbeam, which came out of Nutanix. And then we have done 4 or 5 cyber, and I started a company in cyber just 3 months ago called Anzena, which is about democratizing workflows for security. I think cyber is an extremely important area, but it's a very fragmented area. And I'm not an expert, I'm learning. I am interested in certain subsets of cyber. So cyber is a very important area. It is very important for companies to build into it. Which subsets of it are important for venture capital? I can't tell you the answer, because so much of cyber budget is based on FOMO, and so much of buys happen without thinking about the ROIs. Number two. Number three is it's a highly fragmented space now. We had, one of our Israeli companies had some absurd number. They were talking to one of the big banks. They had bought that big bank, which you all know of, based in New York. They had bought 200 pieces of software for cyber, 200. So the CISO was telling us, I have no idea which part of which software is doing what for me. I don't even have visibility, a common dashboard to show me stuff together for these 200 tools, right? So I think given that, if you want to do a cyber company, be very mindful of whether it's fragmented or not, that area. Second is be very mindful of budgets. It's very hard to create budgets going forward. You always want to use budgets that are already there. Now, a very strong confirmation bias we have at 8VC is we are platform thinkers. So if we look at some cyber area, like if you look at SIEM, right? SIEM is interesting for when it was created. It was pioneered by Splunk, even though we don't like to say it, because people at Google and Yahoo had built this before Splunk was born. I don't want to go there because we had to build it. But there's an infrastructure feel to it. There's an infrastructure platform feel to it where, whoa, you have to think about the data tier. You have to have a DSL tier. You need almost real-time streaming. The UI is actually not that trivial. You have to do some pivots, right? We have built this stuff. We instinctively like cyber areas which have a touch of infrastructure about it, which naturally cuts down the choices. So anyway, I'm not a cyber expert, so don't take anything I say seriously. But we think it's in the two areas we think of secularly going forward. That will remain very important. We don't say AI as one of them. It's security and data. So we only say massive budgets are going to accrue security and data in the context of clouds. But cloud is a horizontal idea, security. So we are highly bullish on cyber. Just encourage you guys to be mindful of which sub area you work on.
Thank you for your feedback.
Oh.
Okay, thank you, Bhaskar. We are at the end of the hour. So, thank you for sharing your gyan. You said you were reluctant to share, but you shared enough, I think, to inspire many youngsters in this company. Thanks for spending time, and thanks for spending time with our RISE program after this also.
Just very amazed to be here. I mean, Razorpay is an amazing company. You guys will make it even better. And we are extremely bullish on the India ecosystem. So would love to work with some of you guys.
Awesome.
Thank you for having us over.
Okay, thank you.